Washington Senator Mitch McConnell, the Republican leader, was not in a talking mood on Wednesday as he sped through the corridors of the Capitol. It had been roughly 12 hours since Doug Jones, a Democrat, had won election to the Senate, a victory that for Mr. McConnell spelled both bad news and good news. It was quite an impressive election, Mr. McConnell, of Kentucky, said tersely. It was a big turnout, and an unusual day. The election of Mr. Jones, the first Democrat to win a Senate seat in Alabama in 25 years, will have significant consequences on the national level, making it more difficult for Republicans to enact their legislative agenda and opening, for the first time, a possible, if narrow, path to a Democratic majority in the Senate in 2018. For Mr. McConnell, it has very immediate consequences. It reduces his already razor-thin majority in the Senate to 51 from 52 votes. But it also relieves Mr. McConnell of a huge problem, having to deal with Roy S. Moore, the unpredictable Alabama Republican nominee whose candidacy was tarred by allegations that he molested a 14-year-old girl and made sexual advances toward other teenagers. Mr. McConnell called repeatedly for Mr. Moore to abandon his campaign and had pledged that Mr. Moore would face an ethics committee investigation the moment he arrived in the Senate, an inquiry that could have put the Senate on a tortuous path to expel him. Mr. Moore, a deeply polarizing former judge who is aligned with Stephen K. Bannon, President Trump's former chief strategist, would undoubtedly have given Mr. McConnell headaches on policy matters, as well. It's short-term pain, long-term gain, said Scott Jennings, a Republican strategist who is close to Mr. McConnell, in assessing the election results. The short-term pain, Mr. Jennings went on, is of course going from 52 to 51, but it's not like he had 52 reliable votes anyway, so he still has the same problem. The long-term gain, however, is that we are not saddled with Roy Moore, which would have been a huge anchor on the president and on the Republicans in Congress. Throughout the Capitol on Wednesday, Senate Republicans seemed resigned to the results of a race in which they knew there would be no good outcome. The good voters of Alabama soundly rejected Roy Moore, who in my opinion does not represent the future of the Republican Party, said Senator Lamar Alexander, Republican of Tennessee. Senator Richard C. Shelby, the senior Republican in Alabama's congressional delegation and an outspoken opponent of Mr. Moore, said that as he watched the returns on Tuesday night, he was conflicted. Mr. Moore's loss would cause Republicans to lose a Senate seat, but Mr. Shelby confessed to feeling relieved, and said he was proud of the people of Alabama, telling reporters, "I believe they chose principle over politics." Senator Richard M. Burr, Republican of North Carolina, tried gamely to make the argument that life would be easier for Mr. McConnell with Mr. Jones in the Senate. "I think it might be easier to manage a 51-seat majority than a 52, Mr. Burr said.